Hello Reddit, this is my first time posting, so please forgive me if this story doesn't flow as smoothly as the ones I've seen in videos. I'm one of those people who usually watches Reddit story compilations during my downtime. I never thought I'd be the one writing my own story, but here I am, typing this out in the middle of the night, scared, confused, and trying to make sense of everything that's happening. To keep this anonymous, let's call me Amy and my husband Matt. I'm 29, he's 28, and we've been married for 2 years. Matt is an incredible person in every sense of the word. He's quiet and thoughtful, not someone who seeks attention or makes a big deal out of things. Honestly, that was what drew me to him when we first met in college. He wasn't like the loud, obnoxious guys I used to date. Matt was different, and I love that about him. But Matt's differences go beyond his personality. He has hobbies that aren't exactly what you'd consider traditional for a man. He loves baking, not just as a casual hobby, but as a true passion. He'll spend hours perfecting recipes, experimenting with new techniques, and creating desserts that look like they belong in a high-end bakery. And then there's knitting. Matt can sit for hours creating scarves, blankets, and sweaters. It's not exactly the picture of a husband I grew up with. My dad was the stereotypical man's man, the kind of guy who didn't even know where the vacuum was, let alone bake or knit. At first, Matt's quirky interests didn't bother me. In fact, I admired his skills, his dedication to his skincare routine, and his ability to make even the simplest outfits look runway-ready made me feel lucky to have such a polished and attractive husband. But over time, I started to feel conflicted. Growing up in a traditional household, I had this ingrained idea of what a husband should be. Someone who could chop wood, fix cars, and build shelves. Matt didn't fit that mold. And as much as I hate to admit it, I started wishing he did. Things became more strained when I reconnected with a group of girlfriends from my old job. We began meeting up weekly for dinners and drinks. At first, it was harmless fun, but over time, our conversations deepened, and my frustrations with Matt started creeping in. One night, after a few glasses of wine, I shared some anecdotes about Matt's hobbies. I expected a quick laugh, but their reactions stirred something in me. They joked that I must be the man of the house and teased that Amy wears the pants. I laughed along, but their validation of my frustrations began to shift how I viewed Matt. The teasing didn't stop with them. Slowly, it seeped into my behavior at home. I started making offhand remarks, rolling my eyes at his projects, and sighing when he asked me to try his latest dessert. What began as jokes turned into sharper, more pointed comments. I knew I was hurting him, but I convinced myself it was just banter, just harmless teasing. The breaking point came at a recent dinner with my friend group and their partners. Matt joined us, and as the wine flowed, the jokes about him started again. "Does he let you wear the pants at home, Amy?" Someone joked, laughing. But does he just pick out better ones for you?" I saw Matt's jaw tighten, but he stayed calm. Then someone made a crack about him being a house husband and asked if he brought any baked goods to share. Matt's response shocked everyone. He stood up, smiled calmly, and said, "Actually, I did. I'll be right back." He left the restaurant and returned with a beautifully decorated cake. Setting it on the table, he said, "Since I'm already playing the house husband role, I might as well do it properly. Please enjoy." Then he looked directly at me and added, "I'll see you at home," before walking out of the restaurant. The room went silent. Everyone stared at the cake, unsure of what to say. I felt humiliated, but not because of Matt. In that moment, I realized I had let my insecurities and need for external validation damage our relationship. When I got home, Matt wasn't there. He's been staying at a friend's place ever since, barely speaking to me. I'm devastated. I love him, and I don't want this to be the end of our marriage. I'm writing this because I need advice. How do I fix this? How do I show him that I'm willing to change and become better? I know I've made mistakes, but I'm ready to own them and do whatever it takes to save our relationship. I never thought things could spiral so far out of control. Matt wasn't just my husband. He was my rock, my partner in everything. And yet, as much as I loved him, I allowed my own insecurities and the influence of those around me to chip away at the foundation of our marriage. Matt wasn't the manly man I had convinced myself I needed. He was gentle, thoughtful, and confident in his own way, a way that clashed with the ideals I thought I wanted. Deep down, I appreciated everything he did for me, but part of me resented him for not fitting into the mold I'd created in my head. My friends didn't make it any easier. On the rare occasions Matt joined us, they would mock him, teasing his hobbies, his style, even his kindness. I should have defended him, stood by him, but I didn't. It was easier to laugh along, to avoid being the target of their sharp tongues myself. The breaking point came during a dinner I'll never forget. I had chosen an expensive restaurant, fully expecting Matt to pay, as he always did. The evening started pleasantly enough, but things took a turn when the conversation drifted to masculinity. What began as lighthearted jokes quickly turned into direct jabs at Matt. I laughed. I even joined in. Looking back, I can't believe how blind I was to the pain in his eyes. My friends tore into him, painting a caricature of the man I loved, and I played along as if it didn't matter. Then Matt snapped, not with anger but with clarity. He called out every single person at the table. One by one, he exposed their hypocrisies. The friend who cheated, the one drowning in debt while pretending to be wealthy, and another who was jobless but pretended to have a high-profile career. Then he turned to me. "You depend on me for everything," he said, his voice steady but cutting. "And you have the audacity to mock me in front of people who wouldn't last a day without their lies." The room went silent. Matt stood, paid for his portion of the meal, and left. I was frozen in shock, but the reality hit me like a freight train when the bill arrived. My friends, who had no money to cover their meals, looked to me for help. But when I checked our joint account, it was empty. Matt had drained it. Desperate, I called my mom for help. She covered my share, and I left my so-called friends to deal with their mess. When I got home, Matt was gone. The next days were a blur of unanswered calls, sleepless nights, and growing panic. His family refused to speak to me. His workplace had security escort me out when I tried to see him. He was gone, and I was utterly alone. After a week, he returned, but not to reconcile. He came to end things. "I can't stay with someone who thinks so little of me," he said. I begged, pleaded, promised to change, but he was resolute. He packed my things, called me an Uber, and sent me back to my parents' house. The divorce papers came shortly after. Since then, my life has been a series of hardships. My friends vanished when I cut them off. My parents, though supportive at first, eventually grew tired of my struggles and told me I needed to stand on my own. I found work as a live-in nanny, only to lose that job when I got sick and couldn't keep up with the demands. Now, I'm jobless, homeless, and living in the spare room of a distant cousin who barely tolerates me. I've hit rock bottom, and it feels like I'm still falling. I've spent countless nights replaying everything in my head, wishing I could undo the damage. I know I failed Matt in every way possible, and I don't blame him for walking away. He deserved better than the person I was. If I could tell him one thing, it would be this: I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for who I was. I'm trying to be better now, not because I hope he'll come back, but because it's the least I can do to honor the love I squandered. Matt, if you ever read this, I want you to know that you were right to leave. You deserve someone who stood by you, not someone who tore you down. I'm sorry I wasn't that person. And to anyone else reading this, let my mistakes be a lesson. Cherish what you have, and don't let pride or the opinions of others destroy what truly matters. After Matt left, I tried to contact him, but it was in vain. He blocked my number, didn't reply to emails, and ignored all my attempts to apologize. Even our mutual friends didn't know where he had gone. That's when I realized he truly wasn't coming back this time. My friends, who used to be allies in everything, started distancing themselves from me. They felt I had hurt Matt too much, and when he stopped paying for our outings, they had no reason to stick around either. I began to feel lonely, abandoned by the very people I once called friends. The biggest blow came when I realized my finances depended entirely on Matt. He used to take care of all the bills, and I only contributed a small amount from my part-time job. Without him, I couldn't maintain the apartment or the luxurious lifestyle I had grown accustomed to. I had to sell my expensive belongings and move into a smaller apartment in a less safe neighborhood. The days that followed were filled with self-reflection and regret. I couldn't stop thinking about what Matt said that night. His words were not only true, but also exposed my selfishness and ingratitude. I had taken his kindness for granted and even turned him into a joke to please my friends. I decided to change. I found a full-time job, though the pay was initially low, but it was the first step toward regaining independence. I also started attending therapy sessions, where I learned to face my mistakes and rebuild my self-esteem without tearing others down. As time passed, I began to appreciate the value of everything Matt had done for me. He didn't just love me. He gave me a comfortable and stable life, something I had squandered. Sometimes I wonder if I should try to reach out to him again, not to ask him to come back, but to sincerely apologize. But I know it might not be fair to him. Matt deserves a life where he's not dragged down by someone like me. The biggest lesson I've learned is that no one owes you anything, not even those who love you the most. Kindness and love should never be taken for granted, and the people we love should never be made to bear the weight of our insecurities or ego. This is my story, a story of loss, regret, and hard-learned lessons. If you have someone who loves you unconditionally, cherish them before it's too late.